So the lamas have asked some of the students to share thoughts or reflections or stories about Gyatrul Rinpoche. And so I just have a few thoughts to share with everyone today. I've actually been a student of Rinpoche's for a much shorter time than many people here. And I know there are many older students who have much more engaging and interesting stories to tell, and hopefully they'll be telling them in the next days. But I did have the good fortune to be Gyatrul Rinpoche's attendant, and then also to be with him, live with him as part of his household when he was in retirement for the last 7.5 years of his life. And so in trying to think about Gyatrul Rinpoche and what were his qualities, it's really hard to describe him because he was always very changeable. For example, even his name. Half the Sangha thinks it should be spelled Gyatrul with an L, and the other half thinks it should be spelled Gyatrul with no L, because he described it sometimes. He said, I am the Chinese Tulku, Gyatrul. Sometimes he said, I'm the Tulku from Gyalrong. So even his name, his birthday, so many basic facts about him were kind of undetermined and very fluid, and always seemed to be changing in response to the beings that he was relating to and what they needed, or who knows, whatever he thought was the right thing. But in thinking about him, I really think that everything he did was to benefit others. And I think that every moment he was always finding what is the most beneficial thing I can do in that moment to help others. And so when I think about his life from that perspective, as long as I've known him, if I think, well, what was he focusing on and what was he doing? He was always focused on his Dharma centers, every detail of his Dharma centers. If he was an ordinary person, I would say he was completely obsessed with his Dharma centers. And when he was younger, he would go around by himself, whatever center he was staying at every day. He would walk around and see what was going on and see what people were doing and check everything, not only the statues and the stupas, and see what needed repair or what he wanted to build next, but also checking the doorknobs and make sure that, the lights were turned off. He was always turning off the lights. Or he would notice, oh, the chopins are breaking a lot of incense, tell them not to waste incense. Or just everything about the center, the land and the water and the plumbing, just every detail he was checking all the time. But he wasn't stingy. He didn't want us to waste anything that belonged to the Dharma Center, but at the same time, he wasn't stingy. He loved to go and buy things, especially for the workers. Many times the guys would be doing a really hard construction project, or the painters would be painting, and he loved to go to town and get cake or snacks or beer when it was hot, summertime. He just loved to get things for his guys and his workers, and he loved to do that. And when he got older, he couldn't go to the store, but he would just give us like a wad of money and be like, go buy a really nice cake. Go get a nice cake. So that was really his focus. And it's easy, I think. And he always would say, everybody, please, when I die, take care of my archives, take care of my Dharma centers. Even when he was alive, take care of the centers. And I could see that sometimes people would respond to this with a feeling of kind of, I don't know, reluctance or depression or something like that. And I think it's because for us, with our mundane view, the Dharma Center can seem very mundane. It's full of people. You don't necessarily get along with all of them. There's a board. You don't necessarily always agree with their decisions. Or, it's this big giant building. It's always a little messy inside. Or maybe you feel like you don't fit, or like Rinpoche is asking you to be someone else when he says, take care of my centers. Or maybe you feel guilty, like, oh, I don't do as much as everyone else, or oh, these people are always working so hard and I'm never able to do that much. So it's easy to have a sense of discouragement when you hear that. And I've seen so many people, including myself, have that when he was alive and he would say that. But I think that's just really a misunderstanding of his view of his Dharma centers and his legacy. Because I think in his mind, really, the Dharma center is just like, it's that which makes the Dharma available in a particular place and time. And it's really just an expression of our collective and individual merit and aspirations. I think if we could see what it took to get here, how many lifetimes we personally worked so hard, and we made so many yearning aspirations to be able to understand the truth about reality, or to be able to get out of the state of suffering, or to help others get out of the state of suffering. And we worked hard to get ourselves out of the lower realms, which is a really big achievement. And we managed to get here. And here we are. Everything about the center is an expression of so much merit. I think it takes a lot more merit to have a working doorknob at a Dharma center than it does to have a working doorknob at your house, because the Dharma center is where we do Dharma. Like, everything about this place is just this incredible amount of merit. And the direct result of our own wishes and aspirations. And so then if you ask, well, how do you support Rinpoche's legacy, or how do you support his center? I really think that it doesn't mean that every person has to come and do a particular task or a particular job, or plug in or follow this or that. I think everybody has to find their own way to relate. The most important thing is that we're using the center, that we're using it to learn the Dharma, to learn how to practice, to study, and to learn all of the arts and things that go along with this. And then, just like you use your house and then you take care of it, I think naturally you'll just find ways that this just becomes part of your life. And I think Rinpoche's legacy extends even to people very far away, even if you can't even come to the center. But if you think of it, thinking of Gyatrul Rinpoche or his Kudung or Orgyen Dorje Den, and just saying, wow, what an amazing place. I so appreciate that that exists in the world. That right there is supporting Rinpoche's legacy. And also, I think it's important to remember that he has a very strong legacy of joking around. So you can support Rinpoche's legacy just by joking and making things lighter than they were before. And I think we also can support Rinpoche's legacy just by being kind to each other and appreciating each other. Because everybody at the center, whether it's the leaders, whether it's the followers, whether it's even the bossiest person, they need a lot of love and understanding. And so even if you don't do anything else, just being encouraging and supportive is really, really helpful. So as Gyatrul Rinpoche got older, he couldn't go around by himself, so he would take an attendant around and check everything. Or even as he got older, he would stay upstairs at Tashi Choling in his room, but he would ask, oh, who's here, and what are they doing, and what's going on? Just always thinking about the Dharma centers. And even when he was in his late 80s at Tashi Choling and he'd had a stroke, he walked with a cane, he had gout, his foot would hurt every day. He always wanted to go and do korwa down at the statue garden, do circumambulation. And sometimes we would worried about him because he just seemed so uncomfortable and he was so happy in his bed, which he called his heavenly heaven. And we would say, oh, Rinpoche, you don't have to go do korwa today. It's okay, just relax. And he would be like, no, I have to go, I have to go every day. It would be such a huge waste. Like, those relics, those statues, those prayer wheels are so important. It would be a huge waste if I miss one day. And he would go down and he would go around maybe 1 or 2 times, and then he would sit in the garden. And then it was the attendant's job to do the korwa, because that's probably really why he went there anyway, was to get the other person to do it. And actually, it's funny because when you're taking care of an elderly lama, a lot of times it's your job, most of the time, to try to get him to do things that you think are good for him, you know. Oh, Rinpoche, would you like to go for a walk? Oh, Rinpoche, it's time to brush your teeth. Oh, you know. And then he would respond in various ways. And sometimes you'd say, oh, Rinpoche, would you like to go for a walk? And he would say, no, thank you. And then you knew you were finished. That was the end of the argument. You were not going to get any traction. So when he would go down and sit in the statue garden, one time there was one lady there and she was working in the garden, and he looked over and he said, oh, you know, right now she's offering flowers to Vajrasattva. In the future she'll be born in Vajrasattva's Pure Land. And he was always so excited, even about the tiniest gestures, the tiniest things we could do at the Dharma Center. I think in his mind, these centers established in a dark land where there's no Dharma, in a place where most of the population doesn't know or understand or appreciate anything that's happening here. There's so many obstacles and difficulties. The merit of establishing these places, or even just coming to do anything here, is so amazingly great. He would get so excited to see someone doing the most small or mundane thing, and he would just be like, oh, thank you, oh, and just the implication that this would be of amazing benefit in our future lives. Like, we have no idea the benefit here. And I always just remember how excited Rinpoche would get. I was making one tiny torma. I was learning to make a torma, and he said, oh, thank you. And he sat down for about 5 minutes just thanking me and telling me this is so wonderful, so amazing. And so he really thought that these places, just everything that happens here, is of very great import and very powerful for our future lives. And when in 2015, he moved down to his sponsor's house, Mimi's house, and then he kind of went into retirement. He didn't really say or want to go into retirement, but his health made it so that he just couldn't watch every detail of the centers anymore, and he just couldn't follow. It takes so much energy and effort following everything, traveling back and forth, just so much energy and effort going into that continuously, and he just couldn't do it anymore. But he always asked, he would ask again and again, oh, well, what's happening at Tashi Choling? What's happening at ODD? Who's there? What are they doing? And like Lama Chinam said, in some ways this last 7 years we were kind of like the children with training wheels on our bike, because the centers had to stand up and make decisions without Rinpoche, but he was still there in his physical form, giving us reassurance and guidance and encouragement and many subtle teachings. And so we'd have these conversations. He'd say, oh, what about this and what about that and everything, and then at the end he would say, these days I'm really useless. I'm so sorry. I can't do anything. And we would say, no, Rinpoche. Sorry. We'd say, no, Rinpoche, really, it's fine. You worked so hard for 40 years. You did so good. And now it's your job. Just hang out, rest, enjoy the flowers and the deer and the lizards. He would look out the window at all the animals and enjoy your food, and just, it's fine. We'll take care of everything, we promise. We'll be harmonious. We'll take care of your centers. We'll take care of the archives. We'll take care of everything. And we had to say this to him many times. But he would, and he did. He relaxed, and he had some really lovely years where he didn't have to have that pressure, that constant pressure of what's happening at the centers and where am I going next. Sometimes he'd wake up in the morning and say, well, where do I have to go today? And we'd say, Rinpoche, you don't have to go anywhere. Like, you can, if you want to, we can go. But, and then he would just say, oh, thank you. And he really enjoyed his life. And so I really feel confident. I'm really grateful for everyone who's here and everyone who's on Zoom and everyone who's not even on Zoom, but who's connected to Rinpoche and thinking about his centers. And I really feel confident that all of us can find how we can support Rinpoche's legacy. And the last thing that I wanted to say is I don't feel like I can say anything in public about Rinpoche without thanking Mimi, who was Rinpoche's sponsor and his attendant for many years, and who was Rinpoche's mommy for the last 7 years of his life. And she has many excellent qualities. She's always been focused not only on Rinpoche, but on all of his projects, supporting them not only with generosity, but with incredible attention and care. and just really personally devoted to every aspect of Rinpoche and his activities. And one thing that really stuck out for me in the last 7 years is that whenever we would reach a juncture and we would say, okay, well, how should we do this or how should we do that? And then we would be like, well, what does Rinpoche really need? What will really serve his best interests? And then once we figured that out, then Mimi would just do it. It didn't matter what kind of sacrifice she had to go to. It didn't matter the expense. It didn't matter the inconvenience. Nothing, just if she knew what would really serve his best interests and support his life, then that was it. That was it for her. And so she just had this unconditional devotion and love. And I really feel that set the tone for Rinpoche's retirement. And I feel that really supported his longevity. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Mimi. Thank you.